welcome to another episode of Education Closet on Demand. I'm your host, Susan Riley, and I'm also the founder of educationcloset.com, as well as an arts integration specialist. So as we are headed into the new school year, I know so many of you are already going back, getting your rooms ready. I noticed that there's a lot of different pieces on how do I set up my room, what themes should I use this year, and one that struck me this week was a gardening theme. And the reason that struck me is because my husband has actually decided this year to plant a deck garden on our deck. We have a very large deck in the back of our home, and he decided that rather than try and plant a garden out in our backyard where all the deer and the rabbits can come and get it, he was going to put it on the deck this year. And this is the first foray that we had into any kind of a vegetable garden or fruit garden or anything. And so it was really fun to kind of pick out the seeds and plant them. But we've also learned quite a bit along the way because there were plants that did not produce anything, even after having a blossom. And we thought for sure we were going to be able to get some really great fruit or vegetables from that particular plant. It just didn't happen because the blossoms never turned into an actual vegetable or a fruit. And then there were things that took off that we had no idea would take off. I think I'm going to be eating beets for the next 5 years of my life. But what was interesting to me about this was the idea as we were doing this, as we were working through the garden idea ourselves as a family, that it brought us together. And I couldn't help but thinking about cultivating your own artist garden. So what I mean by that is that so often as educators, we don't think of ourselves as artisans, and yet we are. And our students are artisans too in their own right. And how do we cultivate both their artistry and our own? And especially when we first get started in the school year, we tend to be so focused on, getting things set up and getting everything ready and our first couple of lessons and getting everything engaged that we get caught in this momentum. And suddenly it's the end of September, our goals are due, and we look around and go, what happened to that first month? What happened to our goals? And while we want to cultivate an artist mindset, suddenly it seems like, well, we're already a month in. How am I going to change those routines now? And think about that. So having gone through this whole gardening experience this summer, I learned a couple of things that I'd love to share with you in this episode. So the first part of any garden is planting the seeds, right? Well, it's really cultivating the soil, getting it ready. And that is where most of you are right now, right? We're getting our rooms ready. We're excited. We have to till up some of that old soil. You can't just let it lie flat. You have to dig it up a little bit and shake it up a little bit. And so the challenge for us as educators is figuring out, how am I going to shake up this soil? How am I going to create something that is new this year in my room? Is it going to be changing the placement of some things? Is it going to be trying some new professional development? Is it going to be changing up my bulletin boards? It doesn't have to be huge, but tilling up that soil, really kind of getting it turned over is important. And then planting the seeds. So thinking about really early on the small things that you can do to encourage that creative mindset. Because remember, seeds are tiny. I mean, when we planted those carrot seeds, they're like, the size of a tip of a fingernail. I'm like looking at my fingernails. They're so super tiny. And yet they produce this really great vegetable at the end of things. So the same is true about planting the seeds of the creative mindset right from the start of your classroom. What are the small things that you can start with? Maybe it's a warm-up strategy. Maybe it's a transition that is artistic. And we certainly have lots of examples of that in our strategies section on our YouTube channel. But start small, but pick the seeds that you want to plant. once you plant them, you're going to notice that some weeds crop up. And those are some things that you got to get out of there, right? So you got to constantly be looking for what are some things that are popping up that are just a nuisance and making time to get rid of that. So go through once a week in your plan book, in your daily schedule, and take a look at some things that are weeds in your teaching life and in your artistry that need to get out of there, need to be picked. And they're going to come back. We know that weeds always come back. They're never away for good. So be mindful of that and set aside time now to go through the things in your planning and in your schedule that constantly come up to take away your time that really aren't necessary. So constantly be weeding that garden. Then you want to think about deadheading. Now, I knew nothing of deadheading when we first started this process, but I learned really quickly that deadheading is important. I always used to think that, once the flower's life is done, it just drops off and you're done. No, you can get another flower and another one if you deadhead and get rid of the muck. And you know what the muck is in your artist's garden, whether that's you as an artist personally, what the muck is, if it's inside your head, if it's the things that are telling you, oh, this is no good, this is not going to work, if it's downplaying yourself, that's for your own internal artist garden. If it's your garden as an educator, it could be the naysayers that you run into all the time that, as you're trying these new things, they're looking at you going, oh, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for this. Get rid of that stuff. Deadhead it. Think about, okay, fine. You're done. I'm not going to worry about you, or I'm not going to pay attention to this. I am deadheading that out of my time so that something new and revitalizing and beautiful can emerge. And then you always want to water your plants. If you don't have enough water, they shrivel up and die. So watering your ideas is important. Going and finding a community that believes the same thing you do. So whether that's through Twitter, or if it's a PLC, a professional learning community in your own school or your district, go find some people and some ideas that refresh what you're doing and breathe some life into what you're trying to share. Because at the end of all of that, you get to harvest the beautiful artistry and products that come out of that whole process. And that could be student work, student growth, being able to watch them emerge as these amazing artists in their own right, in anything, in reading and writing and math, in the fine arts, in any area. Watching yourself grow and see how you improve, watching how others around you respond and start to join in and see the value of the creative mindset and of working through the arts. All of that is a part of your harvest. And your harvest is only as good as the process that you put into the idea of gardening your own artistry. So we had a really great abundance in our harvest this year, which we're so grateful for. But there were a lot of lessons learned, and I hope that some of these lessons also kind of connect with you as you begin your year, no matter how you set up your classroom. For more ideas like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and I will see you on the next episode of Education Closet on Demand.